so salty, I still think about it.
Okay, you can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Gonna take you on a ride. We're gonna burn through the night. When you're so salty, I still think about it.
We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop. Okay.
Gonna take you on a ride. We're gonna burn through the night. When you're so salty,
You sure you can handle? Okay. We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop. Can't stop. Can't stop.
To the second in-person female leaders event. My name is James Thompson. I'm the chair of the IET London Young Professional Network. Before I just give a real brief introduction, just some housekeeping. Fire exits, if the alarm does go off, there and there. There's no planned fire alarm tests or anything, so if you hear it, please run fast. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, the IET London YP Committee is a voluntary committee of 15 people. We run events mostly here related to engineering and sort of technology and data and AI for various different audiences, and this is the first of 3 in-person events we've got this year. So this being female leaders, we've got a institutional event next month called Chain with the IMECE and ICE. And then we've got a Hot Topics one in September as well. So please look out for those if you enjoy today. We also run monthly Meet the Engineer webinars where we bring in people across industry to talk about their career and sort of lessons they've learned. So again, to a variety of audiences. So if you have any questions regarding the committee or events or sign up as a volunteer, maybe please contact me. I'll be dotted around today, or better yet, please contact Myla, who's taking over from me as chair in October. So she'd probably be better placed to do that. So without further ado, I'll introduce Myla very briefly, who will be our host for this evening. So Myla studied integrated engineering at Cardiff University. She worked at Network Rail as a placement in that time, as a railway signalling engineer, and published an academic paper during her undergraduate dissertation. Since graduating in 2021, she's completed the Network Rail graduate scheme, training in railway signalling discipline. She now works at Heathrow, poor girl, as a rail control systems and signalling engineer, working on the airport track transit system, as well as the passenger transit system and the Heathrow pods. Through these experiences and being a direct recipient of early engagement, Myla has really developed a passion for railway engineering, as well as STEM, and I can say from a personal perspective and working with her, she's done a lot for that over the past couple of years from a committee perspective and through work as well. And as mentioned, she's currently the vice chair of the IT Young Professional Committee, taking over from chair in October, and very excited for her to replace me and probably do a better job as well. So yeah, and one of the main things she's done is organising this great event and host it. So without further ado, I'll shut up and hand over to her. Thank you all.
Hello. Thanks for that, James. It was really weird to hear about myself. Without further ado, we'll get this event started. So I'll start by introducing our panelists. Hopefully this works. Yeah. So I'll start with Carmini Edgley, who is the Director of Engineering, Asset Management, Safety and Sustainable Growth at Network Rail. She's an experienced and motivated industry leader with a wide range of experience in the rail industry spanning over 25 years. Carmini became Director of Engineering for North Western Central in September 2019, having previously acted as Chief Engineer for Network Rail. Since November 2021, she has taken on the role of Director of Safety and Engineering, where in her current role she is the guiding mind for safety and engineering for the region, which includes the West Coast Main Line, which is also known as the backbone of Britain. Carmini is passionate about STEM, having sponsored the creation of the first STEM lab in Network Rail, which I've seen myself and is quite amazing. And she is an excellent role model for young engineers and a champion of D&I. She enjoys creating a high-performance culture and has a proven track record of coaching, mentoring, and supporting staff in helping them maximise their potential and deliver outstanding results. So, really happy to have you on board. Yes, that deserves it. And we have our second panellist, who's Titi Olide, who is a senior... let me change it so you can see a lovely picture behind. Who's a senior process safety engineer at Supercritical. Titi is a chartered engineer with a background in chemical engineering and experience in safety and reliability engineering for major projects in the energy and transport infrastructure industries. She is currently a senior process safety engineer in the green hydrogen industry. She is also passionate about demystifying and encouraging diversity in the engineering programs, authoring blog articles, and mentorship of other engineers on their professional registration journeys. She has recently received awards such as the 2023 IET Young Women Engineer of the Year and the 2023 Women's Engineering Society Top 50 Women in Engineering Award as well. So I think that also deserves a round. And last but not least, I'll introduce our final panellist, who is Kirsty Richardson, who is the Head of Aviation Security Compliance at the UK Civil Aviation Authority. Kirsty is a dynamic, proactive, and organised senior leader, accustomed to leading teams and delivering business results, whilst working within challenging, regulated, and fast-paced environments. Since graduating with an engineering degree, she has developed over 20 years' work experience in both manufacturing and service sectors in small and large organisations, predominantly in aviation. Her most recent experience is with the CAA, the aerospace regulator of safety, security and consumer protection in the UK. She is responsible for aviation security, compliance and leads a team of 80 people the majority of whom are field-based auditors. The auditors perform oversight of direct aviation security entities throughout the UK to ensure organisations implement aviation security, regulation and manage risk to maintain a safe and secure aviation system. So those are our panellists. So just a quick rundown on today's event. So we had our sort of our pre-networking event over in the A. Lovelace room, and then we have our first session, which is going to be obviously with the introductions that we've had, and session 1 where we'll pose 3 thought-provoking questions to our panellists, and then we'll go on to a short break where we'll have some food because you'll probably be quite hungry, and then go for 3 more questions and a Q&A from yourselves if you have any questions, and then some more networking and more food. Cool, so let's get right into it. So before we get on to our first question, I've got this graph up to give you a bit of context towards it. So we have an extract from a report produced by Engineering UK on the number of women in the engineering and technology workforce. And unfortunately, they've observed a drop from 16.5% in 2022 to 15.7% in 2023. And to further that, that drop has mostly been driven by a fall of 66,000 women between the ages of 35 to 64. So that's indicating that we're getting the women in, but we're not doing so well on the retention. So with that, we'll go to our first question, and I will pose that to Kirsty. What are the barriers against women achieving leadership positions?
Okay, so I think there's a few things. So if we start with the role profile or the person specification for a role, there is published data to suggest that out of all of the accountabilities that's written in a job description or a role profile, say there's 10 accountabilities, males would look at those, and if they can do 50% of them, they kind of go for it. Yep, I can apply for that, that's absolutely fine. Females, unless they can do sort of 9 out of 10 of them, very high percentage, they will not apply. So there's something around ourselves holding us back and recognising that you all have a skill set. We all have a skill set of skills, experience, technical knowledge, qualifications, etc. And it's recognising that you might just need to be a little bit more flexible in applying that to other roles. So, for example, many of us have transferable skills, and I've worked in aviation predominantly, but I've worked in regulated sectors, in compliance, and that can apply equally to many different sectors. So it's recognising that you've got transferable skills and being creative of matching those to the role profile. So not just maybe thinking a bit more creatively and a bit more outside the box about what your skill set is and how you match that to the role that you're interested in for a particular organisation or sector that you're interested in. So I think recognition of transferable skills. I think there's a huge issue in confidence as well. If I think back through my career, it's only now where I've started to sort of gain more confidence in my own ability, and that's taken 20, 30 years to get to that point. If I think back to myself sort of graduating and my first supervisory role kind of thing, everything was new. I felt like I was learning my way constantly, and constantly had this feeling of imposter syndrome. I found that when I changed sectors or changed roles, or maybe picked up a new role with a larger team, for example, I always sort of felt that, my gosh, they've got more experience than me. And that was particularly true. The role I did before this one, also at the CAA, was managing the cybersecurity team. I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I'm a physical and personnel security expert. But actually, how I led that team, I did manage a team and lead a team of experts. So actually, I was drawing on their knowledge and trying to understand, they've got the answers. I just need to sort of maybe just sort of review all the different options and determine, maybe what's the best course. But actually, that's going to come from the team. So recognising that you don't need to have all the answers, but it's probably there somewhere, whether it's within your team or wider within the organisation. So confidence I think, is a big issue as well, and recognising and claiming that you've got an equal right to leadership roles as anybody has. You've got an equal voice, an equal set of skills, and I think women need to be a bit more confident about claiming their seat at the table or their seat in a particular organisation, equal to anybody else, no matter what sort of sector you're from. So there would just be some of the things that I would say they're the barriers. In some cases, it's the role or the way that a job description's written that can hold people back. And I think managers have got a real responsibility to write role profiles that are really, really clear. I remember a previous role I did. There was I was recruiting for a particular role, and the role profile was something like 8 pages long. It was ridiculous. And I remember distinctly there was a word in there, I kid you not, of fierce. When on earth do we want someone to be fierce? It was like, so one thing I did when I took over leading this team was actually just strip the role profile right back, working with HR. There's various tools that you can put a role profile through to see the language that you use. Is that going to attract more sort of male gender type, or is it more female? And the language that's used in the role profile is absolutely key to attracting people to want to apply first. And then, of course, it's always going to be about best person for the role. But we have the skill set, we have the qualifications, and it's sort of recognising that and perhaps being a bit braver and a bit more confident to go for things. So that's what I'd offer.
To support what you've said, anybody who does engineering, whatever shape or form, it's a tough degree to get through. To even get on the course. So everybody's strong and resilient, and do not take the first hurdle as a barrier. Do not give up. And I think those stats are showing that we're probably not doing as much as we could be doing in that area. And, I'll talk a bit more about that later on, but resilience is important. You've got your part to play, and the companies have got their part to play, and push back, challenge when you see things that are being done that's not quite right, but do it in a positive way.
Yeah, I think I like that bit as well. I think another thing I would say is a barrier is sometimes you care too much what other people think. I personally, I'm always telling myself, you shouldn't care what people think, just go for it. Sometimes I think, if I strive to go for some things, people might think, oh, she's a bit too ambitious, she's just been here a few, years, why does she want that particular role, or why does she want to achieve that? So sometimes as well, as you said, we sometimes hold ourselves back, in terms of confidence or being self-conscious, and as I totally agree as well, sometimes each person has a part to play, so both us and the companies as well. I really like what you said. I can imagine what, reading a job description and they say, you have to be fierce. I'll just think, I don't want to work in a boxing ring or, that sort of thing. So I don't think this job is really for me. And, again, as you say, studies have shown that, women tend to work more, better in collaborative environments as opposed to, not that we're not competitive, but, it's more like we want everyone to win, and that's why we use we a lot. We don't tend to want to say, oh, I did this, I did that. So, making sure, and generally that, it also shows that it's also been proven that that's even a better environment for everyone to work in. So, there's just both, there's improvements that can be made on both sides of it. So, yeah.
And I think always see yourself as a change agent. because if you're not going to change it, it's not going to get better for others. And it's important to have that mindset as well.
Yes.
And not just accept things as they are.
I think companies need to realise as well that actually women, a greater diversity in the workforce is good for business. So it was either Deloitte or who was the one that you said, McKinsey.
Yeah.
There's published data on organisations that have a greater diversity on the board. So, different cultures and particularly women in board level positions actually do better financially. You can't dispute the data. They perform better, and what's business about? Making money, ultimately delivering a service, delivering a product, whatever it is, but got to be profitable. So you can't dispute the data that's showing that.
Nice, yeah. And a lot of what you've all said definitely resonates with myself, and I'm sure with a lot of people here as well. That element of not having that inherent confidence, that not trying to be sexist, but men usually do have. And I quite like what Carmini said. Doing a STEM degree in general is actually quite hard. And I remember whilst I was at university, even though I got into engineering, I was doing the degree, and I still didn't believe in myself that I would actually be one, even though, you are actually doing it. So yeah, really, really important stuff that was raised there.
In some universities, like Oxford, it's harder to get into engineering than medicine.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So be proud of yourself.
Yeah, kudos to you all, honestly. Okay, so that leads us nicely to the next question. So obviously we talked about not having that inherent confidence, so I'll pose this question to Titi. What are some practical steps for women to develop a leadership mindset early in their careers?
Okay, no, thank you for that. I think I'll use myself as an example in terms of things that I've done. I still see myself as being quite early in my career as well. But I'll say definitely one of the things that's helped me is having a curious mindset. So trying out new things. I remember in my first job as well, I was there for about almost 4 years. And when they say, oh, we've got this new safety study to do, I'll be like, yeah, I've not done it before, but I'm happy to try it out. And, and then they'll say, oh, there's a project in Abu Dhabi. I was like, sure, I'll go. And then spent 4 months there. And after something, I was like, oh, I need to come back. Not enough. It's too hot in here as well. So, yeah, that was really good. I think for me, that gave me a wide range of experiences that also improved my confidence. I think for me, that really helped me. So, just being able to try out new things and know that, okay, and for me, it built a bit of a track record in my mind that, okay, you did this, you tried out something new and you didn't die, so you're still here, you did it well, you got good feedback, you learned from it, so, it's a good thing. So I think definitely that helps to, develop that sort of leadership mindset that gives you that confidence that would help you, when you do want to go for a leadership position as well. I'll definitely say even another thing that really helped me was volunteering for other activities as well outside of work. So again, that helped me because I wasn't on a graduate scheme as such. So that helped me to get the other sort of skills that you might get on a graduate scheme. So, things that maybe if I wasn't even leading a team within my company, then I would be able to lead a team whilst volunteering as well. If I wasn't giving presentations in my company, because it's the senior engineers that are doing that, I was able to go out and give presentations or talk to people. I volunteered for a mock interview as well, mock interview program that the Association for Black and Minority Engineers in the UK do. And honestly, that changed the game for me in terms of interviewing, because for the first time I was on the other side and I was like, wow, okay, is this how I look when I'm going to interviews like this? Do you know what I mean? So I think those sort of experience, and it goes back to, trying out new things, because it sort of helped me to understand, okay, this is how, I think my interview game changed after that, because I sort of knew, okay, you know what, this is how you get into interviews, this is what you say that would make you, stand out as well. So I think that really helps. So, if you don't have the opportunity to do some things within your workplace, I'll definitely, recommend that you try out, seeking out other organizations that can help you get those experiences as well. I think just having that mindset of, leading yourself, first of all. So self-leadership is also a key part of what, helps me as well. So sometimes I think, okay, yeah, it's a team of one. It's you, I can sometimes they say, board member, like I'm having a board members meeting, but it's me, myself, and I, that sort of thing. So, just having that self-leadership, let's talk about how can we improve myself, how can I improve myself, and that sort of thing, what other skills do I have to gain and all of that. I think that's really important. And last thing I would say is, also seeking to improve others. So when you're working in a team, how can you improve others? How can you make sure that, you're not just the one learning, and even sometimes it might even be, how can I make my boss's work easier as well? Sometimes if I think about it that way, I'm not necessarily leading my boss, but I'm, helping my boss to manage me as well. So those are the type of things that, I've thought that have helped me sort of, develop that mindset whilst so far in my career. And I think it's been working, yeah.
I definitely agree with, if you don't have perhaps a particular competency in the role that you're doing now, think a bit more creatively and do things like you said, outside of work, and then you've got that experience and that example to use in when you're faced with a competency-based question. I do a lot of interviewing, and one thing that's really tough when you've got a number of people coming in from the same role to, then maybe be promoted to the manager role, how do they differentiate themselves? They're all doing the same role. So, it's that looking for that additional element, and if that comes from, outside of the workplace, I personally, I don't see anything wrong with that, use that as an example in the interview, because then you can demonstrate, again, I was talking about those transferable skills. Absolutely. So, you manage some team socially, but actually it just shows that you can do that collaboration and bring a team together, lead them, whatever. But I think as well, it's, be authentic. Don't change who you are. The best of you is going to come when you're being yourself. Mm-hmm. So, be authentic and, recognise your skill set for who you are. Don't sort of try and fit into some other mould. And that's where the key is really finding an organisation that has values that are aligned with your own. So actually it feels like when you're going to work, you can be your authentic self, your true self, and then that organisation is going to get the best out of you, and actually you can be, natural and be yourself as well. Yeah. So yeah, recognise your skill set. Don't change it just to conform.
Yeah. There is an element, I think if I go back to, most engineers are very good at non-verbal. Brilliant. And that's part of the reason why, a lot of us have chosen engineering, because we're great at maths, great at physics and all these subjects. And it's about understanding the landscape, the environment we're operating in, and what are the skills that are required. Titi, you talked about all the other elements, and because all of that growth is important, having that curious mindset is really, really important as well, and understanding where you're operating, where do you want to go. Not necessarily about, oh, this person has done that, I'm going to, each one of you is an individual, and each one of you have got their own journey, and will take their life in a different way, and that's being the authentic person that we're talking about. So it's making sure you understand where you are, where do you want to go, therefore what do you need to get there to that steps, and do not be scared to talk to other people. And we've talked a lot about gender and everything, but create allyship. Because men are our greatest allies to help us, and behind every great woman there's a man supporting them or something else, and there is all of that. So it's about a team. Understand your team, what team you're going to create, and together you'll get on that journey and be successful.
I think that's a good point, actually, looking for role models. You talked about allies, so important, even if it's just someone you want to let off steam too. But role models, and
Yes.
look at people that you see as a role model because they're doing some great stuff, and learn from them. So actually, you know, the opportunity to have them as a mentor. I'm sure people would. I just started a mentoring relationship at work, and I was thrilled to be asked, you know, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm sure I'm getting, well, I hope that person's getting as much out of it because I'm getting loads out of it. But yeah, you know, who can you learn from and have them as your allies and your role models?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to summarise, like what you, TT and Carmony said about, you know, creating that environment for you to thrive in, and having the confidence to do that, and having that curious mindset, I think is really, really important in your early career. And I quite like what you said, Kirsty, about being authentic, because I think it's quite easy, you know, in your early career to adapt to the environment that you're in, kind of change yourself to kind of fit the mold. And obviously, especially being women, you're most likely to be the only one in the room, so you're going to try your best to fit in with the norm, but, you know, embrace the fact that you stand out already without doing anything, which is what a lot of men can't say for themselves. So yeah, really good stuff. So to move on to the next question, so we've talked about sort of what we can do to kind of put ourselves into that sort of journey to leadership. So this is more around our environment, and obviously that's really important to cultivate us to get to those leadership positions. So, Carmony, I'll pose this question to you. So, how can organisations create a more inclusive culture that supports women in leadership?
Thank you. So for me, I think the first one is the companies need to acknowledge that they are committed to doing that. Because if it's a tick box exercise, it's not going to get anywhere. Let's just increase the percentage or whatever else, you know. There needs to be a genuine commitment there for us to move forward and create that inclusive culture. The first thing will be to recruit more women at all levels, because everybody needs a role model. You know, you need to have people you can identify with, people you sort of like want to learn from, and that goes across all the different categories at board level, at exec level, you know, all the way through. And I think companies need to also acknowledge the role that women play in society, you know, all being mothers, being daughters, and everything else, because each of those roles bring different needs. And being, as a company, you need to be able to support people who've got those different roles. So creating the right policy, the right framework is really important. Yeah, I mean, I've worked in engineering for a long time, and I've worked in that macho culture where the meeting is at 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's fine if you haven't got any commitment, but if somebody has got to drop kids at school and stuff, it doesn't work. It just creates a lot of stress. And I think that consideration is important. And it's important to invite women in and make them feel they can have it all, but at the same time be honest that it will be tough. You know? If you want it all, it's not always very easy. So you need to have that flexibility. Yes, you can sort of like work some hours, but then there are some others. So it's a bit of give and take, and that's really important. You know, support framework, having a good support framework. For example, if you want to have a more inclusive culture where you have, where you don't see this drop that we are having currently, a lot of women go on maternity leave, and probably from the age of 30-ish, later on they do not come back. So you can create things like buddying systems, where you know, others who have been on maternity leave and then come back can help people through and say, yes, you can get through it. Because I remember myself, when I came back, you lose a level of confidence if you've been out for a year or something, and you know, work changes, the place change. So it's about understanding what are the demands and having that support framework to get people in, because it is true, having more women, you're more productive, you bring more money in, and the company does better. For women themselves, I think having a network is important. Making sure that you can vent, you can if you're having a bad day, you can talk to somebody, and just sometimes just talking about something brings the solutions through, and being comfortable, being transparent, and being honest, and being able to talk. Earlier on, I mentioned the environment. The environment is so important to help people flourish. And therefore, as companies, it's really important to create that culture and that environment at work. So people can be authentic, they can bring themselves to work, and they can do their best work. And if a company can do that, then they will benefit massively. And they will have that retention as well, because there is a loyalty. If the company looks after you well, you will be loyal to the company, and you will make sure everything goes well. So yes, I think these are the important things in terms of creating an inclusive culture. And I think each one of you can contribute by providing these feedback, by saying, oh, well, you know what, that policy doesn't quite work. Can we revisit that? Because nothing is set in stone, and it's about adapting, changing, improving constantly.
Absolutely, I agree. I really love your point on feedback as well, because so I agree, and you mentioned about environment as well. I think it's very important that a company has an environment that encourages feedback, all types of feedback, and even understanding as well the different ways in which perhaps men and women might give feedback. So some men might be quite direct and be like, you know what, this isn't working, they're always complaining, that sort of thing. But sometimes some women, again, not to sort of generalize across gender, but some women are more likely to, maybe take it on the chin until it then suddenly boils over, and they're like, oh, and they get burnt out, and they can't, take it again, and they just,
They just leave.
They just leave.
Absolutely.
So, understanding that, people might, give feedback differently, and creating that environment that supports all kinds of feedback, I think is really important. I think it's also important to have, as you said, that environment that has, I think allyship is also something that's really important in this case, because again, it would also be great, sometimes as a woman, you don't want to be the person that says, like, maybe you're in a team of 8 people and you're the only woman, and then they set a meeting for 7 a.m. You don't want to be the person that's saying, actually, can we move the meeting to 9? Because then it makes you feel as though, you're not, putting in your best, or you're not, pulling your weight as much as everyone. But then also I think allyship in terms of, okay, perhaps if we had more men also take the kids to school, or, that sort of thing. So encouraging more men to take their paternity leave as well.
Absolutely.
I know this was something that Sheryl Sandberg mentioned in her book Lean In, and was talking about the fact that, even in companies where they've increased their paternity leave, some men still feel a bit like, oh, why should I be away for that long as well? So, encouraging that kind of environment and that feedback from from both genders, I think would be really, really helpful. I think the last thing I also want to talk about here is, how to create, again, an environment that supports failure. So both men and women fail at leadership. I've had male bosses that were, not very great at their job. But I think sometimes the way people react to women failing in leadership positions is a lot harsher than the way they react to men that fail at leadership positions. Sometimes you can even look at some of our prime ministers as well that we've had. So that sort of thing. I think having that environment where, it's okay to fail. Sometimes it's not okay, right? But, just making sure that you put those, I'd say those things or those guardrails or frameworks in place, so that, people are supported so as not to fail, but then even if they do fail, they can come back from it as well. I think that's really important to help women in leadership positions, because sometimes that's part of the reason why you feel so scared to go into a leadership position, because you're like, oh, what if I fail? Like, it's going to be my failure will be publicly televised, that sort of thing. So you feel a bit of that as well. Yeah.
I think women have got a real responsibility to support other women. That sounds really strange, but I've seen examples in various workplaces where women have they feel like they're competing against other women, not against the men, but against other women. That is so wrong. You know, women need to support each other and, you know, celebrate the success of somebody, you know, being promoted. And that sounds really strange, but honestly, I still see that happening in the workplace. And that is fundamentally wrong. You know, we should all sort of support each other, and that goes that goes whatever gender, essentially. Support each other rather than, you know, trying to undermine or, you know, put somebody down.
Sponsorship, I think, you know, when at an earlier stage in your career, having a mentor is really important. As you progress, having a sponsor is equally important. Somebody you can go to and say, well, this is happening, somebody senior, and it's the political landscape, and how you maneuver that is equally important as doing a good job.
No, yeah, that's really, really interesting points raised there. So we talked a lot about feedback, and I know it's not on there, but just a question just to any of you. So do you have any advice on giving constructive feedback? Because I think a lot of us are early in our career as well, and there is that fear of don't want to, you know, make a scene or be dramatic and all those kind of things. So do you have any advice on sort of giving that feedback to kind of make our environments that much easier to be in?
Shall I make a start? I think it's important to understand who you are giving the feedback to and how they will receive it, because not everybody takes feedback, although it's a gift. Not everybody takes it well. So sometimes it may be, rather than going straight, you have to come through a loop to do that. And that's what I mean by, you know, we talked about failures, and sometimes people take it women, they're harsher against women and whatever else. So it's about understanding how you're going to give that, so it's in a constructive way and it's acted upon as well.
So, sorry.
No, go on.
I think my opinion is that feedback is easier when it's sort of timely, so given in the moment, because memories fade and you kind of forget sort of what happened. So try and make sure it's timely, and try and relate it back to evidence. So it's really difficult. I've been in situations where someone sort of phoned me and said, oh, such and such a manager said this to so-and-so, and I'm like, I'm not there, so I didn't witness it firsthand. So we have a scheme around, you know, speak up. So actually, I know it can be really, really difficult, particularly if you're sort of trying to challenge a more senior manager, but if the feedback is given in the moment and you can relate it to something that was actually done, so it's evidential, I think it, in my opinion, and in my experience, it lands better. You know, if you leave it too long, you know, people forget, you know, busy days, things move on, and I think it has less impact then. So that would be mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll just say, you know, just in addition to all that they've said, really great points, just speak up as well. Sometimes as you said, you want to kind of blend in, but you're not blending in already. Like, everyone knows that there's that female engineer there, you know, that sort of thing. So I think just, you know, just go for it. And as long as it's delivered in a way that's constructive, I think, you know, hopefully lands in the right way. But again, some people just might not take the feedback, and then you have to just take the next steps from there and see how well, at least you've done your part, as you know, Kamini mentioned before, that, you know, you should be a change agent. You should always seek to be somebody that wants to leave somewhere a better place, not just necessarily for yourself, but for others as well. Because sometimes you might not even know, you might think you're the only one experiencing that sort of thing, but perhaps, you know, there are more people, and when you speak up, then you suddenly hear, oh, actually, you know, we're all, you know, living the same lives. So that sort of thing, I think, just helps. So just, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway, as they say.
Be brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good advice. And I think also giving feedback is also building your confidence up as well. You know, I've been sort of experiencing it myself. You know, I've saw something that I thought, that didn't sound too great. But I just didn't have the confidence to actually say something there and then. And then I go home and I'm like, oh, this is what I would have said, you know, like play it in my head when, you know, it would have landed much better if I said it there and then. And you probably would have made a bigger impact than you thought you would. So I think it's really important that, you know, we have that empowerment to go and say these things. And especially like in engineering, you know, you might work in some safety critical environments as well. So if you're, you know, not got the confidence to speak out about something, that could put yourself in danger as well. So I think it's really important that we, you know, harbour that, you know, belief that, you know, we can say something when we see it.
And organisations have a responsibility to foster an environment where it is safe to speak up. And I'm sure you'll know whether, is that the done thing around here? Is that an environment where I can speak up? You know, so safety critical environments, they have a sort of safety culture embedded into it. So maybe that's easier, but that isn't necessarily the case in all environments. But then then maybe it's a question of, is this the right environment for me?
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember you said earlier, you know, find a place that fits with your values as well. If it doesn't, then it might be time to move. And, you know, having the confidence to do that is really important. So, yeah, thank you. So that leads us on to our break. So we have some canapes in the room that you were just in. So feel free to meander over there, have some drinks, have some food, and we'll come back here in about 15 minutes' time.
Yeah.
I wanna take you on a ride. We're gonna burn through the night. Why you so salty? I'll still take a bite.
Okay, we can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
I wanna take you on a ride. We're gonna burn through the night. Why you so salty? I'll still take a bite.
We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop. Okay.
I wanna take you on a ride. We're gonna burn through the night. Why you so salty?
You sure you can handle? Okay. We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Hope the canapes and food have given you enough energy for the next session. So, our first question, and I think it relates quite well to what we were talking about already, which is authenticity and professional expectations. So, I think we can all, relate to the fact that, we hide a part of ourselves sometimes, especially if we're in an environment where we're the only female. So this question, I'll pose this to Kirsty. How can women balance authenticity with professional expectations in their leadership roles?
Okay, it's probably going to be quite a bit of repeated comments here from the previous sessions, but I don't apologise for that. I think it reinforces some of the points we've made and how important they are. I think, I said this before, but be yourself. So, we talked about authenticity and being yourself in that, who you are at the weekend, socially, in your home life, should be the same as the person you are when you go to work. It's not about putting on a suit, although I don't think anyone wears suits anymore, do they? But, it's not like putting on a particular... armour or a particular persona even. Nobody probably remembers Mr. Ben, but I think the best of yourself will be when you feel you can be authentic at work. In that you're not changing your behaviour because you feel you have to conform with the particular environment that you work in, or you feel you have to change your approach because the culture of the organisation that you work for is kind of, a particular way which perhaps your true values don't align with. I've worked at companies I enjoy, and I've worked at companies that I enjoy less. And the ones that I enjoy are the ones where I feel I can be myself. And maybe the values of the organisation, we've got 4 key values, and they're very simple, but I can buy into all of them, and they absolutely align with my own. So, organisational values aligning with your personal values, I think, is really important to create that authenticity. I think as well, in being yourself, it's not about sort of behave in the same way that men are, or in the same way that other particular senior leaders are, particularly, unless they may be a role model to you. But don't change your behaviours necessarily, providing they're the right, respectful ones. But don't necessarily need to copy somebody else. Be yourself. That's not to say that you don't want to look at role models and perhaps aspire to some of their qualities, their leadership qualities, but perhaps adapt those so they work for you. I think recognising as well that vulnerability is okay. I've been in situations where I expressed my own vulnerability to perhaps a team or in a particular environment. You don't have to have all the answers. You might be, I mentioned before about looking to my team for the answers and, leading through them ultimately. It's okay to just say you don't know, or just expressing some vulnerability, because actually that's quite authentic, and we don't necessarily feel 100% of the time. You might be having a bit of an off day, and just be honest and say that if it's not your time that particular day, rather than trying to hide it or cover it up in some way. I think less so now, but don't overcompensate for qualities that you maybe don't have. And this again is linked to authenticity. So you don't need to be really aggressive in a leadership role, or particularly assertive if that's not you. So don't overcompensate with skills that are not natural to you in your natural behaviours. I mentioned before around organisations perform better if they've got a more diverse executive committee and board members, and that is, you know, that is factual, and I think that is because a more diverse, you know, senior leadership team brings diversity in thought. So it's recognising that women think differently to men. It's true. It's, you know, we are wired differently, but actually that balance and that I guess multicultural, multi-diverse, multi-gender environment brings that diversity in thought, and actually that can give a better outcome. So, you know, don't be shy to have those conversations where, oh God, I'm going to be the sole voice saying this, because actually, you know, that can harness some great sort of creativity. Yeah, that's what I'd offer.
Yeah, definitely. I think the more inclusive the workplace, the more authentic you can be. You know, you don't have to conform and be like everybody else. So look for environments that are inclusive and therefore can enable you to be your best self. And if there is a toxic environment, get out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a two-way process.
Absolutely,
ultimately.
absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I think, yeah, it's something that it's a fine balance, and I know for me personally, for example, I've had times where I would, for example, I've been told, you know, that maybe I have a bit of a babyish voice, and then I realize that when I'm, you know, leading meetings, next thing that I know, I just suddenly hear my voice, you know, getting more deeper, because I just feel like, okay, they will respect me more if I don't sound like I'm, you know, this, or if I feel like I'm in a room full of more experienced people as well. I find myself overcompensating, as you said. Do you know what I mean? So I think this is something that you learn as you go along as well. But at the same time, it's also about understanding, again, speaking to what you said about, you know, not making sure that you actually have the right characteristics that are needed for leadership. So say, for example, maybe one needs to be more organized, or, you know, that sort of thing. Then you definitely have to, you know, find what works for you. I think that's really important. But yeah, definitely, I think as we've talked about as well, the environment would obviously enable you to be authentic in what you do as well. So that's really key, and that speaks to what, you know, companies need to do on that front. But in terms of, you know, not being shy as well to stand out in the way you lead, just because maybe people lead by having 100 meetings a day, or, you know, micromanaging their
Teams,
their supports, or their reports, or their teams. If you know, communicate clearly that actually, you know what, I want, this is my leadership style, I want people to grow, and people know that this is how you work, then, you know, it might be new, but at some point they'll get with the program. So I think that's really important.
I think experiment a bit as well.
Yeah.
Experiment about what you want and what you don't want. Sometimes it's as important knowing what you don't want as what you do, but you don't necessarily know what you want until you sort of try out a few different things. I remember I'd come from working at an airport, and it was quite a high pressure position, and I remember getting calls about bomb threat aircraft coming in, and New Year's Day there was an unattended vehicle on the forecourt, and with a suitcase on the back of it, and it's like, oh God, I really don't need this right now. And I just thought, oh, do you know, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of those calls at 4 o'clock in the morning, and yeah, just kind of the stress of it all. And so I chose to leave, and then did something completely different, so a project manager role, where I didn't have a team. I didn't have a direct team. So it was a matrix organisation, an engineering organisation, still in aerospace. And so I didn't have a direct team that I was responsible for, but indirectly managed. I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be amazing. You know, this is like so less stressful, etc. I hated it. I sort of stayed there for like 15 months, but then it was like, no. And, you know, at the time I was sort of, oh my goodness, I've left that job that I loved, thought I wanted something else, but actually I didn't. And then actually tried something else, and I didn't like that either, so I left there. But, you know, my point being, the third job that I then went to after the airport. It was like, this is it. This is the one. So, you know, just try and experiment a little bit and try out different things as to what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, definitely. And I like what you said about don't overcompensate, because I think a lot of us might be guilty of that. I definitely am. Obviously, being in a male-dominated environment, I think I've hidden my femininity a bit sometimes. And you kind of naturally do that because you don't feel like you can be yourself. So that's really important advice there. So move on to our next question. So this question does lead into what's been said already, and again, something that you said, Kirsty, diversity in thought, and that men and women are different. And it kind of reminded me of a conversation that I had with a colleague some time ago, who was kind of saying, I don't get this women in engineering stuff. Like, why do we do it? Like, I don't hire someone because they're a woman. I hire because they're, qualified for the job, which is good. Like, you don't want to hire someone to, fit a statistic, but it's also important to acknowledge the fact that there is some qualities in being a woman as well. We think differently, we bring different things to the table because we're women, and I think it's really important to get that point across. So this question I will pose to TT. So what does inclusive leadership mean to you? How do we help our allies to support gender diversity in leadership?
Yeah, no, so this is very important because, again, speaking to the statistics that we saw, right, we've been talking a lot about diversity and making sure that we get more diverse people into engineering. But then inclusion is then talking about how do they feel when they do get in there. Inclusion is what would make them stay. I always say that, diversity is what would get people in, but inclusion is what would get, because imagine if you walk into a room and, you just feel like negative energy, you're gonna want to, hike out of the room straight away. So definitely, I think leaders that understand that when you have diversity or a diverse set of people, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You're going to have to, work with them according to their different strengths and weaknesses. And so an inclusive leader is someone that understands that, someone that also provides that framework to enable that, provides the environment. We've talked a lot about the environment, provides that sort of environment to make sure that, people thrive regardless of, their differences, and they're able to, you're able to turn your strengths into super strengths, and everyone's able to cover each other's weaknesses as well. I think that's really important. And in terms of helping our allies to support gender diversity, I think it's really important to point these things out. I think sometimes, even for us, some women, sometimes even understanding that we are not all the same, for example, and like you talked about, sometimes women, don't support each other. But, that's something that should be more, there should be a more collaborative as opposed to a competitive environment as well. So even helping to understand that is really important, helping people to understand that. And that's something that, leaders need to understand a bit better. And I think sometimes it's also about calling out unconscious bias, or calling out bias because sometimes it might be unconscious. I had to do that recently as well. And, it was not an easy conversation, but it had to be done. And I think that it's really important to hopefully help be that change agent as well, not leave things to just fester as they are. So I think it's just important that, we recognize that it's not also a fight between men and women, as we've talked about as well. Men are women's greatest allies. So we definitely need to work together to have that, enabling environment. So I think that's really important.
So I think to support what you've just said, Titi, we help allies by being allies, don't we? And therefore leading by example, and being the leaders that are welcoming, that are approachable, and people can go to and talk to. Because if we are that person that are out of touch and nobody can relate to, then it's very difficult to engage or to build that rapport. So I think everybody's got a role to do, and I think as senior leaders and women, we need to create that environment that sort of like welcome people and give that opportunity, because I think everybody is got to change, to be a change agent. Then there's work that you need to put in. It doesn't just come, and you need to be very strategic and think about how you're going to approach it, because a lot of the time you don't get the benefit, but generations coming after you or women coming after you will benefit because you made the change and you've made it a better place for them. So it's about investing in the future as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Definitely.
Amazing. So I'll move on to the next question. So obviously being a leader comes with stress, and it's not easy. And I think, Carmony, you said earlier, you know, you can feel that you can have it all. It's not attainable. You can do it, but you obviously don't want to kill yourself on the way. So this question is to Carmony. What self-care practices are essential for women in high-stress leadership positions?
It's quite interesting because my brother, who's a doctor, said, you know, when you're dead, somebody will continue with the cooking and putting the clothes, putting the washing out and things like that. It's not just going to stop, so don't think you have to do everything yourself. And it's very important because together with having it all, you have to have a plan and you have to know yourself. And, you know, it's really important that there is the self-care and the self-love. And because you can't do it all. And you have to have a strategy, you have to have a plan, you need to learn to prioritize. And a lot of the time, what you think is the highest priority will wait or can wait, even if you don't do it sometimes. And there's a book I read by Dr. Gladys. I don't know if anybody has read it in the room. It's she is a 103-year-old doctor. And her book is like a well-lived life. And she's got 6 secrets about, you know, what's important. And the first one, unsurprisingly, is practice self-love. Because if you don't look after yourself, you're not going to be able to look after your family, you're not going to be able to look after anybody at work, you know, and if you look at the stats about young people getting cancer and things like that, it's all on the rise. So it's really important to sort of focus on yourself and don't burn out. So and be constantly on the go. So it's about being strategic, because yes, you can get to the top job, you can get on the board, but how are you going to do it? You know, you can't be super mum, you can't be this, you can't, so always sort of like take help. And I think the other point is about honest connection, you know, about, so what help, what support you can, I talked about network earlier on, what network can you build around you, whether it's family, friends, and even at work. Because sometimes, being the only woman, you can't say, well, you know what, I've got these things to do, or I've got a parents' evening, or whatever else. But if you've got a male colleague that says that, then it helps, doesn't it? And it makes it become the norm, as opposed to the singular person saying something. Learn the lessons. You know, that's something else that she says, and I think for me that's really true, because if something hasn't gone well for you, try and understand why. How would you do it differently next time? Because life is you know, you learn through life, and the minute you stop learning, you die. So try and understand how you're going to change your strategy, change your approach to do something differently, and you know, spend your energy wisely as well, because we can't do everything. We can't be performing be at the top of our game all the time. So and I think that for me, that's where the self-love, self-care comes in. Understand your limit, because it's all about sustainable growth, which is something that, you know, means a lot of things for a lot of people, but it's part of sort of your own life as well. So it's really important for you to grow, for you to achieve. You need to be healthy, you need to look after yourself. And there are different things. I mean, you know, you go on the media, you'll find it. Different thing works for different people. Some people like yoga, meditation, other like running and doing HIIT. So find your space, because we're all different. What works for me will not necessarily work for somebody else. So it's very important to understand, you know, what makes you happy, what you enjoy doing, because if you're happy, you will enable others to be happy, and you will achieve a lot. But it's about being honest with yourself.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think it's about priorities.
Yes.
You've got to prioritise what is important, and working out exactly as you said, I mean, what makes you happy. So what is it that fills your sort of emotional bucket up? You know, when you've got all of those competing pressures that's sort of draining you and gradually taking more out of you, what is it that fills that imaginary bucket back up again? And it as you say, it's different for different people. It might just be as simple as having a social session with a dear friend or somebody that you really, you know, that you can confide in. You know, you've had a particularly bad day, and, you know, I know I'm my own worst enemy, that I don't necessarily want to share that with anyone, but that's when I'm at my worst. The best thing for me is to speak to a trusted friend, colleague,
Yes.
and just get their perspective on it and tell me that it's really not that bad, or everything's okay, it'll be fine. Maybe
So
a few ideas that you could try. Yeah. So yeah, what makes you happy? Absolutely agree, and prioritise some of those things. You know, when are you at your best? I did an MBA a couple of years ago, and I know I'm not at my best at sort of 10 o'clock at night when I'm supposed to be writing an assignment to be submitted by midnight. That is not my best time at all.
I'm the other way. So I'm at my best at night.
Right.
I'm not a morning person.
So we work well. I don't know if we work well. So yeah, you know, recognising when you're at your best. And
Yes.
so if I keep working, I've also realised that my concentration span is not that great either. So, you know, if I get to sort of 6 o'clock at night, I'm like, kind of, I've had enough, really. I'm not at my best. So why am I going to continue working on an assignment, a deadline for work or what have you, when I'm going to spend probably 4 times as long working on it because I'm not being productive? It's not my best time. Get some sleep, get some downtime, and come back to it when I am fresh in the morning, in my case. But yeah, so prioritise, work out what makes you happy, spend some time doing it. You know, sometimes you do have to be selfish. You can't give everything to
Yes.
everybody all of the time. Sometimes you're just going to have to say no. It might be no to work, it might be no to your friends, it might be no to your family, whatever it is, but you've got to work out what your priorities are.
Absolutely, because you have to prioritise yourself, and
Yeah.
women aren't great at doing that. You know, they tend to put everybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. And, you know, going on the sort of like when you're at your best, for me, previously, it was like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, yes, I love a deadline and I love the stress and getting, but I've had to sort of rehabilitate and said, no, you have to sleep for 6 hours, 8 hours or whatever else. So, because it's important.
Yeah.
You know, sleep is an important part of being healthy.
Yeah. Repair. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think community as well is very important. Sometimes, as you said, sometimes you've kind of, I'm the type of person that if something happens to me, I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's my fault. I'm sure I'm the only one in this whole world going through it, and you know, that sort of thing. And then I speak to a couple of friends, and I'm like, okay, we're all living the same lives at the moment, and you know what I mean? So sometimes you might not even have found the solution to the problem yet, but just knowing that it's not just me, you know, calms me down, and then I can have a clearer mind. So having that community of people that are, you know, at the same
You can
level
check
in your
in.
career to, like, you know, check in exactly is really important. I think also sometimes if you look at it, are we maybe putting ourselves in higher, don't get me wrong, leadership positions are high stress, but are there ways that we can also reduce the stress? So for me, again, I realize that I sometimes have an issue with delegating to other people. I feel like, oh, if I started a piece of work, I want to finish it, I want to see it through and all of that. But sometimes, the answer might just be, spend a couple of hours, show another person how to get through it, and that takes something off your plate as well. So I think that's really important. And yeah, sometimes just maybe not also putting too much pressure on ourselves on how to deliver. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, like we should be excellent at what we do, but sometimes we kind of hold ourselves to very, very high standards that, I must not fail because I'm the first woman that they put in this job, and I'm carrying the burden of all the women on my shoulders and everything, that sort of thing. I mean, it is true, you want to do excellent work so that, you pave the way for others, but, sometimes we need to maybe ease off on that, and that will give us stress. And yeah, we've talked a lot about environment, so if the environment is, a bit too toxic, then you know what to do. Pack your bags. So, yeah.
I think if I may just come back on that self-infliction sometimes, and we're all engineers, we're all very creative, and we need to sort of sometimes get on the balcony and take the balcony view and say, well, is there another way of doing this that may be easier, rather than just pushing along and doing it all yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that even comes when you have a bit of downtime as well. Sometimes I find myself, maybe if I'm working on a report or, trying to figure out something and I've been at it, and as you say, I'm like, oh, I need to finish this by a certain time. And then I actually say, you know what, I don't have time for a break and all of that. And then sometimes I say, you know what, I'm just going to go for a walk. I always get my best ideas when I'm walking or doing like other things. So sometimes it's just like you just need to, I go for a walk, I come back and it's like, oh, so it feels like a fresh problem. And then you get that clarity to just move on ahead. So sometimes you see rest as the time that, time wasted, but it's actually time to recover so that you can, go back again. So yeah, definitely do that, even though it may feel counterintuitive sometimes.
Yeah, and I liked what you said about the importance of community as well, because there's not many of us, and if we see each other, stick together. Be advocates for each other. So that's really useful advice. So we'll move it on to the Q&A part of the session. Are there any questions that people have? Cool. Yeah. I'll lend my mic here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for delivering such an amazing panel. It was really good to hear all your experiences. My question relates to visibility. So I think that you spoke about looking at a job description and it being 80% unattainable. Well, I think that that's part of it, but it's also just thinking, I can't see myself in that position because I've not seen anybody do that role. So creating visibility of people in senior leadership positions is really important. So what do you think are the most, what would you do individually to create visibility for yourself, for other people, and also what can organisations do to create visibility?
Shall I get started? Okay. So in terms of creating visibility, today's event is one of those. And it's really important, so well done for organizing today. What organizations can do is take inclusivity seriously and therefore carve time and money, because everything costs money, and understand the outcome that they will get out of it. So the environment is really important to create visibility, because a lot of the time, and I think Titi, you mentioned about, more senior people are being asked to do that, therefore I'll go and do something different. So it's about the culture and the intent. And something I didn't mention earlier on is companies need to understand their talent and understand the different pools that they've got. That's not to discriminate one against another, but to understand what drivers and tools they are going to adopt for each section. So it's really important that we create that environment where everybody can flourish. So the visibility for me, and I suppose that's a question you're asking because you're thinking, well, what can I do myself to get that? I think that curious mind that Titi mentioned earlier on. I mentioned about going outside of engineering, because if you look, the more senior you get and the more leadership role you get, especially if you're working in bigger companies, you need all the different skills. Not being that great engineer itself is not going to give you that ticket to get to, I don't know, board level or an executive level. So you need to be able to perform in all environments and with different things. So try and understand yourself is something that we probably do not do enough of. And therefore, where do I think I need to develop more? Because that's my journey. That's where I want to get. And be kind to yourself. That's really important, because if you think, oh no, this is my target, but you're not happy doing it, then it's not going to go anywhere, or it's going to be and you've got one life, so live it well. Yeah.
I would say if you want to create visibility, use the network that you've got. If you think about friends that work in whatever organisations, your own network. So, there's the organisation you work with, there's suppliers, there's customers, there's a whole set of stakeholders that you can sort of link in with, and sort of have conversations with. Is this about, maybe where you see yourself going in terms of, where you might want to work? So that if you sort of maybe mind map out your network, you'll be surprised where that will take you in terms of, like I say, acquaintances that you have, friends you have, colleagues of colleagues, the sort of 6 degrees of separation. You'll very soon get to a huge network of people across a variety of sectors, leadership positions, technical skills, etc. And, maybe think about who it is that you want to sort of maybe influence, and identify those and think of reasons as to, why you might want to approach them. Most people, people are genuine, and, people want to help other people. So actually a kind of approach out the blue, can I have a conversation with you on this, or just interested in your thoughts on that, or how do I get into this? Most people will give you the time in that. So it requires to be brave, and it's that fear of rejection and what if they don't, but just try it and see if it works, and if it works, then feed off it and maybe try it again with somebody else. I'd be interested to know, actually. I don't think anything bad will happen. I think only good things will come from that kind of approach.
I think patience and resilience is important as well.
Resilience, without a doubt.
Because, if it doesn't work like that, well, maybe there's a different way for it to work. Don't give up. We don't want the stats. We want the stats to change. Yes.
Yeah, resilience, definitely.
Okay, take it 3 of you. Yeah, you can. Oh, okay. Hiya, my name's Kobe. Thanks for your wise words so far. My question is if you went back to the start of your career, is there anything that you would have personally done differently, or any skills that you really would have focused on to better prepare or position yourself for these leadership positions?
Okay, I think I can start with that one. Seeing as going back, my career is just about 10 years, so I can start with that. I'll definitely say, so I mentioned before curious mindset and, trying out everything. If I went back, I would not do everything. I would not say yes to every opportunity. I think I'll be more strategic and have like a goal in mind. I had relatively good experiences, but I also found that at some points in time I was, quite burnt out as well. So yeah, definitely. I think when I started to then look at, okay, especially in my career, right, when I started to look at, okay, what are the things I need for chartership, I then started to filter all the opportunities that I saw through that lens, like, okay, this is what I need, these are the competencies I need to look out for, and then that's what helped me. So I would say definitely being strategically curious is what I would say I would change about it.
I'm going to say something really and I really don't want to sound arrogant now, but I would honestly say no, I wouldn't change anything, because all of it, good and bad, has got me to where I am now, and I've learnt from it. Some things I've said haven't worked. I've worked in companies that I haven't enjoyed, whether it's the role of the company, but I've learnt from it. So just see it as a journey, and you're just taking this sort of road, and you'll end up in places that you maybe wouldn't go back to, but at least you've learnt that, so move on from it. So just, don't think there's anything that's, providing there's nothing kind of life-threatening, safety critical or anything.
True.
Learn from it.
Yeah. I'd say the same thing, actually, because you learn from everything that you go through, and the way I live my life is I don't look back, and everything, whether it's gone well or it hasn't gone well, I've learned from it, and I've adapted and changed, and therefore, it's difficult because your experiences and what you go through will be quite unique, and you just have to forge your way through, and be patience. Maybe something I've learned. I used to be a lot more impatient, and and having faith that the future will be better, will be brighter, and you will be that change agent, because you want to make a difference for the future.
Don't have regrets, then negative thoughts.
Can I ask a part 2 question, if I may? More on the skills part. So if you're quite a junior person in the team, you won't often get the opportunities to kind of work on leadership skills. So what would you suggest someone who's the most junior person?
We were all junior at one stage.
Yeah.
We were all there. So, and we all, I was a graduate. I was in a graduate training scheme. So I've lived through those stages in my career. And I think try and learn as much as you can with what you're doing. Even things you don't enjoy, you learn from. But obviously there's a time limit for how much you stay there. And the minute you feel, well, you know what, I've learned everything I need to do, then try and look for the next experience.
I think most organisations have a training budget. Go and talk to HR or your manager or whatever and see what you can glean for yourself and identify what would benefit you and how that will benefit the organisation. I think most organisations, they don't spend their training budget in the full year, so there's always a bit left in the pot. Make sure they use it on you.
Yeah. And all the learning is not just technical learning. So, focus on the softer skills.
Hi, my name is Melissa. Thank you for your wise words today and coming to talk to us. My question goes back to the first graph that we brought up on the screen. We can see a trail off of the women in engineering after a certain age. And I'm looking at my friends, and they're starting families, they get married. One question I have for all three of you is, how do you manage being at work and being excellent while having that other priority, and to keep going, because I guess you get to a stage where you're middle management, you start a family, but you want to go ahead, you want to be top management. What tips would you say, would you give?
Sure. It's a very personal journey,
Right.
for each one of us. If I talk about myself, and I think I mentioned it during the break, I wanted to be in a senior enough position before I had my daughter. And the reason for that is because it gave me more flexibility, it gave me financial security, but that, you know, that's my journey and how I did it. But in terms of having that framework that I mentioned earlier on, having that support, and being able to, when you hit hurdles, being able to talk to other people who've done it and succeeded, and balancing everything helps with solutions. Because, you know, childcare is expensive. You balance, well, you know, all my earning is going into childcare, but having that resilience and the strategic direction to think, well, kids grow up, you know. Yes, maybe they get more expensive as the older they get, but this is only for a certain period of time. If I invest in my career as well, maybe, you know, I'm not going to progress as quickly as somebody who hasn't got a child, but I'm still in the game. You know, it's about being still in the game, because if you're in the game, you can win the game. If you're outside the game, you can't win it. So yeah.
I think it's a lot more balanced now in the workplace. I've got a lot of male colleagues, and they're the ones that are doing nursery run, school run, childcare, you know, maternity leave, paternity leave. You can decide whether it's the male or the female, if it's that kind of partnership, that who takes the time off.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of the sort of equality that's come about ultimately for females initially, you know, as the ones having the children, but actually those benefits can be taken by the male, and actually men have benefited from being able to take their kids to school and have time off with them, and flexible working, hybrid working. You know, most organisations know that that is a reality now, and to attract, you know, the highest quality, highest calibre candidates, they've got to offer these kind of flexible working packages for men and for women, for whatever gender, however you associate yourself. So, you know, it's a lot more accepted now.
I mean, I often say I've got a good team at home and I've got a good team at work, because having that good supportive team at home enables you to sort of like be your best at work.
I mean, I've got colleagues that are single parents as well, and the job that we do, it does cover the whole of the UK, and, you know, that there can be some travel, but it's been realistic that, you know, that single parent, for example, may not be able to travel up to Scotland to whatever organisation that day, but can they do it remotely? You know, all technology has come on leaps and bounds, and that's one good thing that came out of COVID. So there is a lot of benefits. It's a lot more flexible nowadays. But, you know, be honest about what your needs are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, yeah, as you say, it takes a village. They always say it takes a village to, you know,
yes.
raise a family.
Yes.
So speaks to community as well. You know, if you have to, depending on, as you mentioned, Kamini, it's a personal journey. There's some, and I guess that's why, you know, I know there's a bit of talk about whether feminism is good or not, but that's what feminism is about, a choice. So some people might choose, you know what, I've gotten to this stage in my career, I started a family now, and I want to, you know, focus on my family for now. And then, you know, at some point in time, they should have the choice to be able to then go back and integrate back into the workforce after, you know, they feel that the family life is, you know, stable enough for them to do that. And then there are also initiatives around, I don't know if people have heard of STEM returners, for example. They also help to, like, get people back into work and integrate back into work as well. And, you know, also I think I also want to talk about perceptions that people have. So sometimes people think, oh, you know, when a woman goes on maternity leave or comes back, you know, she might be distracted. But I mean, studies or people have also spoken about how, you know, when you have a child, you just suddenly become more time, you have like better time management and things like that.
You
and
prioritize better.
Yeah, exactly. You're prioritizing better because you know that when baby's asleep, I have to do, you know, laundry and everything, you know, that sort of thing. So you're very good at that. So I think changing that perception is also very important. And, you know, we've spoken about environment, having a supportive partner as well is very important. Is one of the key decisions that can help, you know, in that what's called. So I think it's a very personal journey, and, you know, finding out what works best and being aware of the opportunities that are available or the initiatives that are available is very key.
I have a question. I'm Anupurba, and my question is that as we go up the pyramid, it becomes narrower, and like maybe for a leadership positions you will hire one of three. So what distinguishes maybe the three people applying for the same leadership position might have the same skill set, they might be from the same university, they might have the similar skills. So what distinguishes between the person who makes it till the leadership and who just can't make it to that position and is just like one level below? So what is it, like a variety of skills or expertise in one particular skill? So what is it?
So each hiring manager will have different requirements. You know, there isn't, I wouldn't say there's a checklist, and if you think, well, I've ticked all these boxes, then I've got the job compared to somebody else. A lot of the time it will be the rapport that the person feel they have with you, or they can engage with you, and whether as a team you work together to deliver the outcomes that needs to be delivered. So if I go back to something I said earlier on about the environmental landscape, the political landscape, all these come into effect. So it's quite important sometimes when you are being interviewed to understand the person that's interviewing you. Yeah. And what are their drivers, what do they seek out of somebody, because take it for given that, you know, you can do the job and everything else. It's about the softer side of it.
Fit, yeah.
I have a follow-up question to that. If others have also something to say, then I can go on with my follow-up.
All right. Okay. I was just going to say that I agree with that, because when you start looking at leadership positions, it's not, when you look at, sometimes when you look at graduate positions, right, they're looking out for maybe more of your technical or academic background, but when you start to get to those positions, it's more about your people skills, your rapport, the social skills that you have as well. I think it's very important to bring yourself authentically as well to the interview, so that you don't then have to, because if you know, contort yourself into the right person that you think they're looking out for, then you're going to have to do that for the rest of when you actually start the job, and that's going to perhaps go against the grain of, you know, who you are, what you stand for. So you always want to be conscious of that. So trying to understand what the role is, what it's looking out for, and if you build a rapport, a good relationship with the hiring manager, then that's great. It means that you fit in. But if you don't, then maybe you're also dodging a bullet, because, you know, you won't necessarily fit in there as well.
It's a two-way contract, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes.
Amazing.
I think she said she has a
Do you have a follow-up? Okay, yeah.
So, if you are in an environment where maybe you are in a team where you are completely, like she said, if you are the only woman, you are already standing out without doing anything. So in that sort of a situation, is it difficult? I mean, is it just me, or does everybody find it a little difficult to kind of build that connection or the rapport that you were talking about? Because I personally have often found a little difficult to build that connection if I am the only female amongst a few people.
It's always difficult to be different, you know, and not to sort of like fit the mold, but make that your USP in terms, and it's easier said than done as well. And that's why I go to understand the environment, because you have to influence, you have to build the rapport, you know, you have to go beyond your technical skills to be able, because when you're leading a diverse group of people. And for each one of them to perform, you need to be the situational leader that can understand them and bring the best out of them. So it's really important to develop, and I think, you know, I emphasize that more for engineers than maybe for other discipline. That's a sort of really important part of developing yourself. So yes, because, and I think going back to your first question, I was thinking about it. If I'm going to recruit somebody, and you know, when you come to it, everybody's got the same, I will probably look for somebody, because I like a diverse team. I will look for a skill set that that person has. You know, I'll take it for given that they can do their technical job. What skill set do they have that I currently do not have in my team, and therefore they'll bring an addition to that team and help that team? Because it's not just about working for me, it's about that group of people. So that's really important.
I think, I was just going to say that to your question about, you know, finding it difficult to connect because you're the only female in the team, I think just because you're not the same doesn't mean you can't connect, is what I would say. So take, for example, you know, I worked in a team where, you know, people like either they supported Manchester City or they supported Manchester United. I don't really care for football. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't understand the concept of 90 minutes of, you know, people running
Don't
out.
tell the crew at the back, look at that.
I mean, I could watch it for some time, but not 90 minutes. But one thing I did to sort of build connections with people was, you know, if I see the scores, I'll be like, or if I just saw that, oh, you know, Manchester United is playing a game, or, you know, that sort of thing, I would be like, oh, you know, before I maybe just to like soften them up, before I ask them a technical question, I'd be like, oh, you know, are you going to see the game today? That sort of thing. Like, if I knew about it, like, it didn't take too much. Like, I didn't go and start studying about football. Do you get what I mean? But if I did see it, I would sort of keep it in my mind, and just that's an opportunity to connect with them. Also, if I remember that maybe somebody talks about their children, or like they have a pet or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. That's where you can connect with people, even if that's not something that a characteristic that you have, or that you know, or an interest that you have as well. And sometimes even talking about, if people know your interest as well, you know, they don't have to share it, but it's just an opportunity for people to connect with you. So I think that's a way you can sort of, you know, build. And if you love football as well, then even better for you. You know, that's a way to connect with a lot of other men. But there are also some men that don't watch football. So it's a thing about, you know, a personal connection. Finding that, I think, is something that you can definitely make use of.
Yeah, exactly. How do you build rapport? You find common ground, and you know, you find things in common. So yeah. Great, both of you said.
Great. So we've slightly run over by quite a bit. But I think it was worth it. So really good questions there, and I liked how you gave sort of practical answers as well, like things that we can kind of take away and actually work on. So thank you for that. So to close off, that was really bright. I want to say a massive thank you to our panellists for coming all this way and talking to us. I think we've had some really insightful conversations, and I think we can all take away at least something from this. So I think we should give a massive round of applause to our panellists. And also a thank you for you all coming here today and actually being here in person. After COVID, obviously, you know, people prefer to see these things online, so it's nice to see, you know, this many women in the room as well. You go to these IT events and there's not many of us, so it's nice to see so many of you. So massive thank you, and on to some networking and food. Thank you.